As Ryan Magdziarz here, about to interview Jack Delosa live at his place in Mossman. As you can see, I got a lot better looking since last time I checked in with you all. Really excited to interview Jack today. Jack, how's things?
Just chilling in my mansion here in Mossman. It's been a bit of a hassle having Ryan here. He's been pretty needy.
So guys, we're here today at Jackie Delosa's mansion. Thank you so much for having me here last night for breakfast this morning, for the iron. I think that was the pinnacle part of the day, which was great. So Jackie D is literally one of Australia's leading entrepreneurs and investors, founder of the Entourage, which is literally the biggest network of entrepreneurs in Australia and soon to be in the world, with over 300,000 entrepreneurs, which is crazy. And it's Beanstalk as well.
Yeah. That's
recently been launched, which is also one of Australia's best consulting firms, working with the innovation of today's younger entrepreneurs, helping big companies get that younger energy throughout them so they can strategically stick ahead of the game, which is really awesome. So amazing to have you here, Jack.
Good to be here, mate. Good to meet you boys. It's been a good 24 hours.
It has. It's been lots of fun. So let's kick straight in. So what I pretty much want to go through with you today, because I know you've got a wealth of knowledge on business from anywhere from startup all the way to funding hundreds of million dollars worth of business in bigger companies. But today I know the audience that we have are a little bit more in the startup phase. And one thing that I see as being super important in that phase is, and I know you kind of agree with this, is the importance of mixing passion with profit.
Yeah.
I see a lot of entrepreneurs that start out and they are always looking for a gap in the market. So they want to try to find like a competitive edge and they lose sight of their passion. But then you also see entrepreneurs that have just got this idea that they're just engulfed with. It's like they've had an experience personally and they lack out market factors and market demand. My question to you is, if there was someone watching that wants to get started in business and they want to get to a level of success that you have, which has been phenomenal, and they don't know where to start, what step-by-step kind of guide would you give them to find what they're passionate about and start a profitable business that's successful?
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at it as a spectrum between kind of purpose and profit, if you like. And it's not to say that they're juxtaposing ends of the spectrum, because they're completely not. In fact, they work better when they coexist.
Sure.
And so, it's exactly what you just said, man. It's if you went to a traditional venture capitalist, or if you went to Harvard or Babson or a traditional business school, they go, it would all be about market analytics and market data, and that's incredibly important. However, it's not where I suggest early stage entrepreneurs start. Early stage entrepreneurs need to start with themselves. And by that I mean going, what do I love? What am I great at? What do I think I can be the best in the world at? What could I spend the rest of my life doing? What's the ultimate contribution I want to make? What do I want my life to be about? What lifestyle do I want to create? You start with you. And that's not to say that you can then go and start a business that's built around your purpose and passion alone, because if that's the case and you just hold on to that, then no one might buy whatever it is that you're offering, right? And so while you need to start with you then need to go to market demand, consumer demand. Do people want this? Is the market size adequate in order to build the scale and the size of business that I'd like to? And so my view around all of this is, when you can marry what you want your life to be about with a market demand significant enough to build a size of business that you want to build, right?
Sure.
Some people want a business to do a couple hundred K, some people want a business to do a couple hundred mil, some people want a business to do a couple of bill, right? And there are no limiting factors other than the founder. When you can marry those two genuinely, that's where great businesses are formed, in my view.
Awesome. And if you were starting out, because I've been lucky enough to kind of find that marriage, if there was someone that was kind of starting afresh and they wanted that so desperately, they wish they had the vehicle, they kind of know the outcome now, they know where they want to be, what would you start, or where would you tell them to start, and what steps would you tell them to take to try to find that vehicle they can sink their teeth into and give them that marriage that they want between passion and profit and purpose?
You need to start with market demand, which is really starting with a genuine problem. So with the heightened romanticism around entrepreneurship and everybody thinking they want to be an entrepreneur, what you find is there's a lot of solutions out there running around looking for a problem. So I built an app, I just now need to find people who actually want to use it. That's the wrong way around, right? It's no different to Apple's approach to technology, right? When Apple came along, you had IBM, you had HP, there were these large corporations, and they build technology and they go, how are we going to market it? And it's the wrong way to think. The correct way to think is to go, where is a problem that enough people have that they're willing to pay for in order to solve, that I think I can solve for them, or build an organization that can solve for them this challenge really, really well. And I want to do that really, really well for an extended period of time. So you need to find that. How do you find that? Google Analytics, Google keyword searches. You can talk to people, right? Like talk to people. You can hold focus groups. You can look at, go in search of evidence of a problem that you want to solve. And once you find that, it then becomes about product market fit, which is the next step.
And I know a lot of entrepreneurs are actually afraid of that idea of having competition. It's like they have to come up with something that's never ever been done before. I really advise towards competition being a good thing in the sense that that's actually proving the market demand.
I agree.
And you can find your competitive edge within that. So that's awesome. So you've been able to create a phenomenal level of success so early and so young, which is awesome. And it's why, I'm proud to be able to say that I'm here with you and I look up to you a lot, because you're walking the talk every single day and you've got that amazing outcome that you want. If you could go back to when you were 12 years old, and this is not just entrepreneurial in terms of the question, but if you could go back to when you were 12 years old, what 3 pieces of advice would you give yourself back then to help you achieve more success and more happiness in half the time?
Ryan stayed at my house for the last 24 hours, as has Jolie, the cameraman behind the camera, who's an absolute legend. And this man is full of fucking great questions.
Take pride in that.
Mate, very, very cool. It's a really good question. And a good question because it gets you thinking. So at 12...
The reason I said 12 is because when you're born, your journey unfolds naturally and you find what you got to find and you hear and learn what you got to learn. When you're 18, you're already at the point where you've learned a lot, but I feel like 12 is the middle spot.
Yeah, and when you're 18, you kind of need to unlearn everything that you're supposed to learn for the last 6 years. So at 12, by 12, my parents had run the most successful not-for-profit agency in Australia that would take long-term unemployed youth off the street. They'd put them through a 3-month program and then they placed them into employment. They were the best in the country at what they did around that. The government restructured the way they issued capital.
Wow.
To not-for-profits. Breaking the cycle was unsuccessful under the new sort of structure, and the organisation collapsed. So I had already, by 12, I had already developed a strong dissatisfaction with traditional education, the traditional system, be it education, traditional career, that sort of production line that happens. And I'd also developed a huge appreciation for commercialization, because Breaking the Cycle did incredible work, like the best at what they did. They take kids, say kids are kind of 18, 19, 20,
Sure.
literally off the street, off drugs, out of jail, whatever it might be, and then they help them pursue and create meaningful lives, right? And so their intention was as good as it gets, but they collapsed. Why did they collapse? Because they didn't have the money. So it sort of comes back to what we're talking about: purpose and profit, both are equally important. So what I'd kind of, although I wouldn't have articulated it like that at 12, there was an innate understanding of that at 12, because Breaking the Cycle had been successful and collapsed. So at 12, what I would say is 3 pieces of advice I'd give myself: find a purpose and a path that you want to dedicate your life's work to. Try and become the best in the world at it, number 2. Number 3, fuck what everyone else thinks and says along the way. When the voice inside your head is louder than the voices outside your head, that's when you've begun to master your life.
Very beautifully put. Great answer. So when you kind of say that, it's like, stuff what anyone else says. I know in my time...
That's what I said, Ryan.
That's exactly what you said, Jack. Stuff what everyone else says. You're pretty much saying, because for me, I didn't listen to a lot of people, and then I found myself hitting issues if only I'd listened to them. But what I realized is, until I'd kind of proven that myself, I was never going to get the learning anyway, because I had to get it through action. And if I could listen to my gut and just execute quicker, I would have got the learnings quicker. So I just love that piece of advice. I think it's just absolutely crucial. If you could have dinner with any 3 human beings on Earth that are alive today,
Have to be alive.
they have to be alive. You wouldn't want them dead. To have lunch or dinner with, who would they be and why?
Number 1 would be Elon Musk. I think Musk is, if he's not already, then he is on his way to becoming the most influential human being in history, because he's enabling humanity to become multiplanetary. You know, he's got us landing on Mars in 2024, which is 8 years away, obviously, and then he wants to colonize Mars. He's through Tesla and Solar City. He's trying to catalyze a change in the transport industry and in the energy industry away from fossil fuels towards sustainable energy creation and consumption. And so when it comes to physics, biology, energy, rocket science, business, capital, entrepreneurship, spirituality, I think, although it's hard to find stuff around Musk's spirituality, but I get the sense that he's a little bit spiritual. Tech, you know, he's arguably the best in the world at all. Like he's arguably the best rocket science in the world. He's brought more innovation to rocket science in the last 10 years than NASA, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, the US government, China, and Russia did in the last 60 years. Right? He's an individual driving in SpaceX, a private company. So he's the most impressive human, I reckon, and he's by far the most impressive entrepreneur. And he's about legacy as opposed to primarily commercial gain. So Musk is number 1.
How do you feel about the fact that Pokemon Go's launch was bigger than Tesla's last launch?
It's the world we live in, right?
You've been on Pokemon Go, haven't you?
It's like it's like you know, like Miley Cyrus twerking gets more hits on YouTube than
Sure.
You know, Warren Buffett talking about how he invests, right? Like that's just the world we live in. Most people don't want to think. So, yeah, you know, so number 1 would be Musk. Number 2, probably Oprah. I haven't met Oprah, and I would love to meet Oprah. Why? Spiritual alignment, high degree of purpose, came from nothing, beautiful person. And I know people that know Oprah, and she is who she is.
I must say that's exactly the same as you as well. It's like,
thanks, man.
Coming in today, it's Joel commented on it before, you've just been just such a nice human being and such a genuine human being. So, you know, you've got that too.
Appreciate that, brother. You know what it is? It's the coming from nothing thing, right? Anybody that's come from nothing and become successful, quote unquote, and the quote unquote is important, because like successful in the eyes of society, which I think is a relatively shallow view of success. That's another conversation. Anyone that's come from nothing to get there has endured so much challenge and so much adversity and so much stuff throughout the way, and so many failures and so many mistakes that it embeds in you an innate and an eternal humility, right? It's what I've seen, what I tend to observe, and this is a generalization, but those who have a degree of arrogance are either those who probably haven't reached a level of success that they want to, or perhaps that they try and project. Secondly, they did it fast, or there was an element of luck. So they haven't, like anyone that's gone through all of the bullshit to get there, you'll find are humble. Like if you can watch interviews with Warren Buffett, he's one of the most humble people in the world, right? Same with Gates to a degree. Jobs wasn't so humble, but doesn't matter. So yeah, it challenge, you know, breeds humility. Number 3, I wish they didn't have to be alive, because I'd say Jobs. I reckon Jobs is like the Michael Jordan of business. So dust him off.
The reason I said alive is because I knew you were going to go to.
Yeah.
If there was anyone else alive, is there anyone that comes to mind?
Maybe Gates, Bill Gates, for the purpose of, again, you know, I identify with people who live a mission-based life, and particularly what Gates has done, well, what he's done with Microsoft and post-Microsoft in philanthropy. In fact, it would be Gates, because what I would like to talk to Gates about is, what are the challenges you face, right? Because what fascinates me is that everybody wants to make a difference, right? And then you get Bill Gates, who's worth $60 billion and dedicates his life to solving, you know, poverty and AIDS and all of this different stuff in Africa. And it's interesting to go, do you think the needle has shifted? And what is required? Like if someone like Bill Gates with his resource, his intelligence, his expertise, his networks can only shift the needle this much, Bill, what's it going to take to solve the problem? You know, like that would be an interesting conversation.
That'd be an amazing conversation, actually. Because that's so many resources, and there's so many people that we work with, because we work a lot with coaches who want to shift that a lot, including myself, and the scale in which he's got access to resources and influence and intelligence, like you said, is just ridiculous. And that's such an interesting way to look at it. And it is kind of shifting, it's just such small amounts.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting. So you've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners through your saleable and scalable program, through the Entourage, and you've got over 300,000 people on your database and in that community, which is amazing. So what do you see as the number one kind of reoccurring hiccup that entrepreneurs, or the biggest struggle they have starting out, that for you is just like, oh my gosh, same thing? Is there anything that's really stood out as an issue amongst startups?
There's a lot. Firstly, I think, you know, the number one primary fundamental, like if you just follow the stream right up to where it starts, the number one primary thing that I think stifles people from starting and or growing is often mindset, right? Like you need to have, you know, I've got a friend of mine, a guy called Peter Davison, he seed funded PayPal. So he came in at a val of, he was a venture capitalist, came in at a val of 500K, sold for 1.5 bill. So he was, you know, he did all right in that deal. And I say, and you know, he's invested in heaps of entrepreneurs, right, in the States and Australia, and tech and different industries. I go, what's the number one ingredient an entrepreneur needs? And he goes, delusion, right? Because in the early days, I think, well, in early and later days, you need a high degree of confidence. However you develop that, because you do develop it, it's not natural for most of us to go, right? So that's probably the first, and to keep going, right? Because the more successful one becomes, the bigger the bets you make, right? And so when I make a strategic decision in terms of things in my business, it might be a $2 million investment, right, that needs to be made over 6 months. Whereas,
we were just talking earlier today about the idea, we can beep it if I can't talk about this either, but of getting an island. Yeah. Yeah, so you're thinking about getting an island.
Yeah, I haven't
slightly
that yet, but it's out now.
But we can, you know, that idea of doing that is a bigger issue than going, what color should my logo be? So, and when you say ignorance, you're talking about the fact that sometimes you need to not even realize that how hard it's going to be. So you feel like it's going to be easier than what it is. So you actually do it. And then that ignorance creates progress and starting and 100%, momentum.
100%. Every entrepreneur, Branson has said that to me. He's, you know, like, it's the same with every entrepreneur in that, you know, if you said to me, Jack, if you knew how hard it was going to be when you were 18, would you have started in business? And of course I would, because it's been worth it. However, if you truly think about that and you were to speak to my 18-year-old self, at 18, where I didn't, you know, I didn't understand a lot at 18, and you were to tell me how hard it was then, in my state then, I probably would have chosen a different path, to my detriment. I'm so fucking glad that I did it.
Sure,
I'm really
of course.
Glad with everything, including all of the challenges along the way. But yeah, you do need to be a little bit naive in the beginning, and everyone is, because you just don't. It's hard to appreciate how difficult it's going to be.
Sure. So you need to have confidence starting out. That's the number one thing that entrepreneurs lack. Is there any tips around how someone could try to get more confidence? Just like a quick tip when they're starting out.
For me, you know, I in my view, too many people discount their own voice and their own opinion and their own intuition and give far too much weight to the voice and the opinions of others, right? So traditional education and largely culture at large teaches us that somebody else has the answers, somebody else more experienced, more qualified, more intelligent, when in reality, particularly the macro decisions that relate to your life, and particularly direction and business and all this sort of stuff, the only person qualified to make those decisions is you. And so I think it comes by going, just turn your voice up and disregard conventional wisdom, disregard criticism, and disregard the advice of others a lot of the time, including me.
That's a very interesting thing to add there at the end. So don't listen to that. No, awesome. And on that point, I feel like it weaves really nicely into a question I was going to ask. in a couple of
What
quick...
I mean by that, when I say including me,
Sure.
what I mean by that is,
I would love to
if
hear
I
this.
say something that worked for me, and you're watching this, and you go, that wouldn't work for me, don't do it because Jack said it, right? If I say something, but your voice says something else, your voice is right? Don't go, well, Jack's done all this stuff and he's successful, whatever, and therefore he must be right. And we tend to minimize ourselves, particularly when we put others on a pedestal, right? So if I say something and it resonates, boom. But that's not really me, that's me sort of instigating it, but it's your inner voice that's resonating with it. Whereas if you hear anything that doesn't resonate, which, is very common, always back your own intuition.
And that was very similar to the answer or the advice you would have given to your 12-year-old self, where you said, don't listen to those people on the journey, because even if the advice is wrong, even if what Jack's saying is right and what you're thinking you need to do isn't right, you have to own that decision and find it for yourself sometimes, which is really important.
Very true.
Awesome.
Very good point.
So weaving into that last question, I think this works really well. At the Entourage over the last few years, you've been having an enormous amount of growth. I know we were talking last night, chilling out on the balcony, talking about the fact that you've gone from 15 to 100 or close to 100 people in your organization, which is crazy. It's exciting. It's crazy. Over the last 2 years in the Entourage, what's like one issue that you've made, or what's one mistake that you've made, given and just showing the guys that are listening that mistakes get made all the time? What's one particular kind of mistake that you made that you think the people watching could learn from? And how did you bounce back?
Yeah, I think a business goes through stages, right? So in the early stage, startup stage, what you need is hustle and grit and determination. And as an organization grows, we're a $60 million organization today. As an organization grows, you get to a point where you need to start valuing experience more than youth. And I probably got to that a little bit too late. So if you look at my team today, I've got a COO who's built several substantial education institutions around Australia, that have exited for $300 million. My CFO is comes from a similar background in education and has a high degree of experience. Same with my head of education. So I've got an executive team who have a high degree of experience and proven results that span back in some instances a couple of decades, right? Whereas even a year ago I didn't have that. And so the lesson is that the people required in order to operationalize, because I'll always lead it, but in order to operationalize as you build, will change as the organization scales.
Because you can look at your product and you can go, if we're doing 100 units of my $1,000 product, then here's what the organization can look like. Maybe I can manage it myself with no employees. And then if you need 1,000 units, then it changes completely. Then 10,000 units, you need an organizational structure with a set of management and different communication. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, infrastructure and technology and management and the level of sophistication heightens significantly. So you can't have a lack of experience within the organization when it gets to a certain point.
And this is interesting because that's kind of what people teach at university. It's that how to run how a massive company runs, or what's the structure looks like. It's just not relevant to what you should be doing in a startup,
100%.
Which is why we don't take it on board.
Yes.
But if I think back, because I dropped out of uni, if I think back to some of the things we learned, I'm thinking, some of that's actually good stuff to know. It just wasn't relevant for such a big part of that startup. It went in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and both are equally important, right? Because you don't want to, particularly if it's your first business, you don't want to start by having a COO with 20 years experience. Like, firstly, you won't be able to afford them. Secondly, they won't be able to do anything because the organisation isn't built yet. Thirdly, you won't actually value what they're saying because they're used to playing with medium to large scale organisations. So be a startup. In terms of my biggest lesson over the last couple of years is at each stage you need to recalibrate, push the reset button. Where are we now? And always bring your people with you. Always bring everybody with you. But it's about when you're recruiting, who do you need to replenish and refresh the organisation with?
Who's going to take you to that next level of organizational, operational runnings? Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great answer, man. Great answer. So I know you've had one thing that I really appreciate with what you do and how you act is I feel like you're incredibly awesome with people. You know, not just people who are at a higher level, which is kind of a really awesome asset to have, but just with anyone. You're a very social person that gets on, very humble, and like we spoke about, it's coming from humble beginnings. What's kind of one big distinction that you've learned around people that could help the guys that are watching better manage their relationships in business and in life? What's something you learned about people that was just kind of like an aha moment that made it easier to interact with people and build rapport with people and just, yeah.
Whether you want to be a better leader, a better entrepreneur, a better marketer, a better manager, a better speaker, a better coach, a better human being, a better son, a better daughter, a better husband, better fucking anything, there's one thing, and it's authenticity, right? Which is more difficult and requires more strength than I think people realize at first. And so when I started in business, and I think this is true for a lot of people, and this is why I call my first book Unprofessional, is because particularly when people step into business mode, this mask goes up, right? And this fence goes up and this barrier goes up where I'm now need to be a professional and I need to use the big words and the professional jargon and don't have too much fun and don't swear and there's all of these rules and some of them are good some of the time, but none of them are good all of the time. And for me, what I found is that the more authentically myself I became, the more the world smiled back.
Even if it's something that's not positive or it's a painful.
100%.
Awesome.
Because people, we live in a world where people crave real. Like so much of the world, and it's not just TV, it's not just the media, it's how you operate when you step into a boardroom or when you step into a sales presentation or even when you're liaising with colleagues, right? There's such a high degree of superficiality. And so someone comes along who's just happy to stand in their own truth and stand in their own authenticity and be themselves, and emote, and communicate and connect at a heart level rather than just the jargonistic level. That's what connects.
That's one thing that really jumped out at me earlier, and it escaped my mind because I was just engaged in what you were saying. But we're talking about what creates someone that's a humble, awesome human being, and we said humble beginnings. I really feel like there's this separating factor between people who tend to be trapped in the ego and people that are trapped in heart. And it sounds like a very personal development orientated question, and it kind of is, but just like people that are real and love and care for other people and people that are trapped in worrying about what other people think of them and, like you said, the superficiality kind of mindset. What do you think allows people to step into their heart?
Yeah.
That's deep, by the way.
Good questions, right? So surrender to heart almost sounds as if you're talking about this love, trust, and pixie dust thing, right? Like it's almost like, oh, that's the fluffy stuff. Surrendering to heart, in the true sense of the word, is, in my view, the strongest demonstration of human will that exists. Right? There's nothing more challenging. And so the distinction is firstly study it. Right, because I think study and explore your heart, study and explore the spiritual side of life, right? And so the last book I wrote, Unwritten, is a philosophical book with a somewhat spiritual lens to it all. That if I didn't write the book and I was to sit around and read the book, it's the kind of book I would read on a Sunday. Right, Unprofessional is the kind of book I read on a Monday because you get practical tips around start and build business. Unwritten is more philosophical, spiritual, right? Oprah, What I Know for Sure, is a great, again, not even spiritual book, but heart-led book. There's a book called Conversations with God. It's not a religious book. I'm not a religious person, although I have respect for that. That's cool. But it's a highly spiritual book. And so read these kinds of books, right? And then you'll watch a couple of interviews with Ryan, you watch a couple of interviews with Jack, you watch a couple of interviews with Oprah, you watch a couple of interviews with Neil Donald Walsh, who's the author of Conversations with God. And in doing so, you'll learn about how to live with more heart. It's a field and a science and a study like anything else. It's no different to learning accounting, right? Harvard have been producing research the last 3 years, well, probably more than that, that proves happiness is a skill, right? Like everything's a fucking skill, like learning the violin. So how do you live with more heart? Learn to.
So understand it, so you conceptualize it, and then you can realize what is hard and what isn't hard. Because a lot of the time we do think it's this fluffy, esoteric kind of like more broad, big picture, fluffy kind of concept.
Yeah.
But living with heart's just kind of being happy and normal and nice and genuine.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I've got a few questions to finish with, a couple of rapid fire questions, just 10, 20-second answer, and then we'll wrap up what's been an awesome interview.
Easy.
So first question is, what was the most painful task that you consistently endured on your journey to be successful?
Cold calling.
Cold calling.
I fucking hate cold calling. Because I worked in a call center as a teenager, and then I started a call center as my first business. Hated call centers. I just wanted to start a business. Had the opportunity to do
That was
it.
your experience.
Hated it.
Oh, yeah. That was 10, 20 seconds. And what do you still do right now that's kind of, you still find challenging, but you still have to do it consistently? It's part of your daily life. What do you kind of find challenging still, but know it has to be done? What's your stretch area? Because I know you try to remove this as well.
Yeah.
You try to remove a lot of resistance. That's why you don't know where the iron is.
I have no idea where my iron is. Well, I do now because Ryan found it.
How was the job, by the way? Thank you, Nana.
Mate, the honest truth is I don't do, and you've got to work to this point, right? Because I've been in business for 12 years now, right? So for the first 5 or 6 years, it's like walking through hell and back. But you start to build the emotional fortitude, the resources, the revenue, the profit, the cash flow, the people around you, to get to a point, and I encourage any human being to try and get to a point where you only do what only you can do. And I'm at that point, right? And so if I find myself straining with anything, that's a flag for me to go, this isn't my lane. Why am I doing it? And I've got such amazing people around me that if I'm straining on something, I go, who will be better at this than me? And I'll give it to Tim, or I'll give it to Keely, or whatever. And they will do it far better than I, and then I'll get back to what I'm great at. And so I honestly don't have anything on a daily basis.
Awesome. That's great to know. And you have worked hard at it, and you deserve that.
Yeah.
So on a daily basis, what do you think you do that impacts the most on your success? For the guys watching that want to be productive and successful, is there any hacks that Jackie D does on a daily basis that really makes a big difference in the way of your experience and productivity and happiness and success on a daily basis?
Yeah, I never use the word hacks, right? Because, and I actually don't know what that word is supposed to mean. But
Well, what I'm saying when I say hacks is there any kind of activity that you do?
Yeah. Well, my answer to that would be leadership. So entrepreneurship to me is a game of leadership. And leadership isn't about telling people what to do or directing people. Leadership is about to what degree do you resonate with the people around you, and to what degree do you enable people to do their life's best work. And so that's all I'm ever focused on is leading, probably first and foremost my team, and secondly leading our community and our student. And I only put it in that order. Who is the most important group of people in my world? Fuck, that's an interesting question, actually.
You've answered. That's the next question. I had it written down.
Is it really?
No. Take ownership.
Because it's a tie. Well, is it my team, like my people, or my community and our students? That I couldn't decide. But so leadership of both those categories is what my life is based on.
So by leading on a daily basis and stepping into the best version of you, it enables you to stay as the best version of you.
Yeah, and once you reach that point, doing your best to enable other people to do the same.
Awesome. So just really clarify this hack, this activity that you do. It impacts the most on your success because when you lead, you're spreading the most of you in the most productive way, because lots of people are being inspiring to go out and do what they love and what they're
That's right.
awesome at.
It's exactly right. You know, my view is that the extent to which you fulfill your vision is the extent to which you can lead people toward it, right? And it's not that you're leading people toward your vision. It needs to be a shared vision. We have this vision together, because there's only so much one person can do in any 24-hour period, right? But you know, I've now got 90 people at our Entrepreneur Development Centre in Ultimo. 90 people can do a lot, and when we have a couple of hundred people, we'll do more, right? And so the extent to which you collectively move toward your vision is the extent to which you can get great people moving toward it.
Awesome. All right, so you've been on stage a lot, but you've also been good at rallying amazing people to come on stage with you. When you have been on stage doing keynotes or running an unconvention, what's the most embarrassing kind of slip up that you've had? I've had my fair share. When I started out, there was one point in which I just got sick. Like I was food poisoning or something right before, and it was an evening event, and I was so sick that I had to sit down when it came time to the pitch, because I was pitching for my livelihood, because I invested in a 50K course starting out. I had to make the weekly payments, and I got so sick I had to sit down. And so I'm starting to get red. I can't even stand up. And I'm just trying to finish this thing and wrap it up. And I actually made a few sales. And then people rallied around to ask me questions at the end. I'm thinking, oh, I thought it was over. And then I had to just excuse it. I sprinted to the toilet and just didn't make it and just munted everywhere. It was absolutely disgusting.
Shit.
So that's pretty hardcore. So see if you can. Is there anything that stands out for you though that was an embarrassing moment on stage?
Nothing that compares to that, unfortunately. But the most embarrassing is probably when I was younger. This probably would have been about 5 years ago or so. I was doing a tour thing with another guy who's very well known in Australia, and because it was on like our third so we're speaking every day for like, I don't know, 6 days or whatever. So so you're on flights every night and all that sort of stuff. So by day 3 or 4. I was really run down. And so I was doing this breathing kind of movement exercise before going on stage. And so my mates are on the AV desk and all that sort of stuff. And I'm outside, I'm doing this movement and this breathing exercise. And then you can sort of hear the introduction in the background, and I kind of know, my cues. And then I go, cool, I need to go in. And I walk in, and the room's just in hysterics. I go, why the fuck is everyone laughing? My microphone was on. And I've never, and so all they do is, all of this weird, all of this, the breathing and this. And so I'm going, oh my God. I look over to my mates on the desk and they're going, I don't know what and that was, because it was a fresh audience as well. It wasn't an audience that knew me. And so you go, all right. Clearly a loser.
That's hilarious. So the reason that I am so humbled to have the chance to interview you today is because you've come from such humble beginnings. So I really appreciate your time today. And the reason behind the interview was to be able to learn from someone who has come from such an enormous journey. You've stepped up so much and grown so much, and you're a phenomenal leader and role model, leading by example. So thank you. If you were to recommend one person who you believe would be awesome for us to interview that's had an amazing journey, coming from a very low place to an enormous amount of success, or for what society would deem, or just a really awesome person, who would come to mind?
Justin Dry.
Justin Dry?
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about him. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mate, he's just, him and Andre, both of them are incredible human beings. So humble, so down to earth. I had Justin here recently to film and Ask Jack.
Awesome.
And they've just not that raising money is ever the measure. However, one thing that these guys are, I could talk to you about their story all day, but one of the things they've done recently is raise 25 mil at a val of, I think it was at a val of 50, which is the largest capital raising in Australia ever.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Mate, well done.
It's been a pleasure.
You're
rocking it.